Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I continue bringing you the story of Tusan and CEO Hoai. Tusan gently smiles, her eyes soft and sincere, as if she is sending all her feelings to those who have quietly followed her journey. She slightly bows her head and expresses her gratitude. Simple, yet enough for listeners to feel her deep appreciation. After that, she quietly wishes everyone peace and hopes that good things will always come into their lives. Her voice remains warm, calm, and carries a unique sense of closeness, as if there is no distance between her and the audience. From that very simplicity, the story slowly unfolds, gentle yet emotional, leading us into ordinary moments that somehow touch the heart. At noon, the sunlight is not too harsh, but softly spreads across the small garden in the peaceful countryside. The space is so quiet that the rustling of leaves in the wind can be clearly heard. Tusan steps into the garden as usual, but the moment she sees her grandmother still bending over the rows of plants, her heart tightens. Her grandmother's figure is small, her back bent with age, yet her hands remain diligent, carefully tending to every plant and leaf. At nearly 90 years old, she should be resting, yet she still cannot leave the garden that has been a part of her entire life. Seeing this, Tusan feels both love and worry quietly rising within her. She quickly walks over, her voice gentle yet full of concern, softly urging her grandmother to come inside and avoid the sun. The old woman simply smiles kindly, a familiar smile Tusan has seen for many years. As if all fatigue becomes lighter, the two slowly walk along the small path in the garden. Each step may be slow, but it is peaceful. Their conversations are nothing grand, just simple questions and familiar reminders. But these small things create a strong bond between them. Her grandmother still clings to the habit of tending the garden, seeing it as an inseparable part of life, while Tusan quietly worries and hopes she will take better care of her health. They continue walking around the small garden, where every flower and every vegetable patch carries the marks of time and careful care. Tusan bends down to pick a few handfuls of wild greens, her hands quick yet gentle, while her grandmother stands beside her, watching with loving eyes. Their conversations flow naturally without effort or arrangement, simply guided by emotion. In that peaceful space, her grandmother suddenly brings up Hoai, his marriage, his future, something she has always been concerned about. Her tone carries no pressure, only a simple and heartfelt wish that her grandson will one day have a complete and happy home. Tusan listens, her eyes soft with understanding. She does not rush to respond, only smiles gently before calmly telling her grandmother about the girl Hoai is in love with. Her words are simple, yet enough to paint the image of a skillful and hard-working girl. Someone who knows how to bake, how to do business, and how to take care of a life. To Tusan, what matters most is not grand things, but sincerity and the ability to build a peaceful life together. After hearing this, her grandmother's expression softens, because to her, as long as two people truly love each other and live happily, that is already something precious. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Hoai is lost in his own thoughts. The space around him seems to quiet down, making room for his concerns about the future. The image of Tusan and her simple life keeps appearing clearly in his mind. These are not distant dreams, but very real and close things, making him think more deeply about what he truly wants to build. He begins to consider renovating the old house. Not something large or extravagant, but a space that is just enough, warm, and suitable for what Tusan loves. He carefully searches for different house designs, considering every small detail, from layout to elements that create warmth. Every decision is made thoughtfully, as if this is not just about renovating a house, but preparing for a new life. He contacts construction units, discusses each item and plan in detail, carrying a quiet hope that everything will soon become reality. For him, this is not just a plan, but a way to show his seriousness about the future he is moving toward. Yet life is not only filled with peaceful moments. In another corner of the story, the atmosphere takes on a completely different tone. In a quiet cafe, a man sits silently with an old photograph in front of him, faded with time. His eyes remain fixed on it, as if trying to hold on to memories that have long passed. There is no one beside him, no conversations, only silence and the weight of his thoughts. He has hired a detective, hoping to find a woman named Thoa, someone who left his life a long time ago. In his eyes is a clear sense of waiting, a fragile hope that has never faded. This is not just a search for a person, but a journey to reclaim unfinished pieces of the past, words left unsaid, emotions left unexpressed, all still quietly existing within him through the years. And as all these stories begin to intertwine, from the peaceful garden to Hai's growing plans, to the man's search for the past, it feels like a new chapter is opening, where connections will become clearer, and the unspoken truths are still waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Returning to the rhythm of everyday life, everything seems to fall back into its familiar course after all that has happened. Yet the emotions within each person still linger. In another part of the story, Trang continues to devote herself to her spa work, where each passing day is tied to effort and constant thoughts about the future. She is not only working for the present, but also for what lies ahead, for the small family she is carefully building step by step. Financial pressure is not always visible, but it quietly exists in her thoughts, making her reflect deeply whenever she looks toward the long road ahead. In her rare moments of rest, Trang often sits quietly, thinking about whether she should change her life. The idea of moving closer to home is something she has considered many times. There is family there, a sense of closeness, and the comfort that anyone would wish for. But at the same time, where she is now is where her work has gradually become stable, where she has poured so much effort into building everything from the ground up. Between these two choices, nothing is easy, and nothing is entirely right or wrong. That is why every decision requires careful thought and mutual understanding between her and her husband. The conversations between Trang and her husband are never filled with tension or arguments. Instead, they are gentle yet meaningful discussions, where both of them truly listen and share their thoughts. They do not rush to make decisions, nor do they impose their views on each other. Each conversation helps them understand one another a little more, gradually easing the worries in their hearts. Together, they weigh their options and try to find the most suitable path, one that allows them to maintain their stable work, which is the foundation of their current life, while also not sacrificing the closeness with family that they both deeply value. The topic of marriage has come up more than once, naturally becoming part of their journey together. Yet in the end, they choose to set it aside for now. Not because it is unimportant, but because they understand that happiness does not lie in formality, in a grand ceremony, or in celebratory wishes. For them, happiness is much simpler. It is the peace of being together every day, the companionship during difficult times, and the strength to walk through each stage of life side by side. This perspective frees them from urgency, replacing it with a quiet reassurance that they are moving in the right direction. Their life continues in this way, without major upheavals, without anything too loud or dramatic, just quietly flowing through simple, meaningful moments. A family meal prepared with simplicity yet full of care, where everyone sits together after a long day. A familiar trip to the market, where small conversations are exchanged among stalls, carrying the breath of everyday life. Moments spent picking vegetables in the garden, hands touching the soil and plants, feeling a deep connection to nature and to their own lives. And then there are quieter moments still, like when Trang gently holds her child in her arms, softly lulling the baby to sleep in a silent space. In those moments, all worries seem to fade away, leaving only warmth and peace. In her eyes, when she looks at her child, there is not only love but also hope, a belief in a future she is working hard to build each day. These are moments that do not need to be spoken aloud, yet they are enough to make one realize that sometimes happiness is not found in grand things, but in the smallest, simplest details. All of these pieces, when brought together, create a deeply emotional picture of life, where every small detail carries its own meaning. And from these very ordinary things, the story continues to unfold, like a gentle, unending flow, connecting with what has already happened and quietly opening the way for what lies ahead. But deep within that gentle flow of emotions, there remains another piece, quiet yet heavy, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. All the peace and simplicity from before now seem to form the backdrop for a different story, where old memories begin to resurface, carrying along emotions that were never truly named. In a quiet cafe, almost isolated from the rhythm of the outside world, a middle-aged man sits silently in a corner. In front of him lies an old photograph, faded by time. The details are no longer as clear as they once were, yet to him, every line remains vivid in memory. He says nothing, simply sits there, his eyes fixed on the photo as if looking through time, returning to days long gone. The silence surrounds him, but within that silence are countless unspoken thoughts. He has sought out a detective, a decision not easily made because it means confronting his own past. The woman named Thoa, the name he has carried in his heart for so many years, is not just a memory, but a part of his life he has never truly let go of. When he speaks of her, his eyes reveal longing, regret, and a fragile hope that one day, he might find what was lost. And then as layers of memory slowly unfold, a truth quietly emerges, without noise, yet powerful enough to change everything. That man is not a stranger to this story. He is Hai's biological father. Placed within the flow of events, this truth suddenly connects everything in a way no one had realized before. For years he has lived with regret and longing, always hoping to find the woman from his past. Not because he could not forget, but because what once existed never had a proper ending. She is tied to a part of his life, to memories that time could never erase. What he does not know, however, is that this journey of searching does not only reach into the past, it may also affect the present, even the future of his own son. The connections that once seemed distant are now slowly drawing closer, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Meanwhile, life continues in its own way. Returning to the familiar rhythm, Trang remains devoted to her spa work, where each day is filled with constant effort. Worries about finances and the future of her small family still linger in her thoughts. She wonders whether she should make a change, whether to move closer to home for more support, or stay where she is, where her work and efforts have taken root over time. Her conversations with her husband continue regularly, not filled with tension or pressure, but with understanding and companionship. They do not rush to find immediate answers, but instead choose to think together, to carefully consider every possibility. Every word comes from care, from the desire to protect what they have while finding the best path forward. They understand that sometimes what matters is not how fast a decision is made, but whether it truly suits both of them. Marriage has been mentioned as well, naturally becoming part of their journey. Yet in the end they choose to set it aside for now. Not because it is unimportant, but because they realize that happiness does not lie in a ceremony or outward form. What fulfills them is the peace of being together each day, the reassurance that no matter what happens, they will face it side by side. Life continues with its simple, familiar moments. A warm family meal after a long day, where everyone gathers and shares small stories. A routine trip to the market, where everyday sounds and images become part of life. Moments spent picking vegetables in the garden, hands touching the soil and plants, feeling life itself. And the quiet times of holding a child to sleep, where all worries seem to fade, leaving only warmth behind. All these simple things come together to create an emotional picture of life, where every small detail holds its own meaning. And within that piece, in another part of the story, a young couple suddenly finds themselves in a situation that leaves them confused and uncertain. Questions begin to arise, choices become more difficult, like a test they must face. No longer just calm days, but moments that require decisions, courage, and the strength to move forward. The story closes with a familiar yet thoughtful image. The man, Hai's biological father, still sits there, waiting for news from the detective. The space around him remains quiet, but inside nothing is still. His gaze drifts into the distance, toward a place where hope still exists, where he believes that one day, everything will be brought to light. Perhaps when that truth is finally revealed, it will not only bring the past back, but also open the door to major changes in the present. And from there, the lives of many people, those who once seemed unrelated, will step into a completely new chapter, where everything begins to connect in ways no one had ever imagined before. And so, as all the pieces continue to move quietly, the story comes to a close in a pause filled with emotion, as if nothing has truly ended, but is instead preparing for a new journey ahead. The unspoken words, the hidden truths, everything is still waiting for the day it will come to light. And when that moment arrives, everything may change in ways no one could have expected. Will that man find the woman from his past? How will Hai react when he learns the truth about his family's past? And where will the choices each person makes today lead them in the future? All will gradually be revealed in the next episodes. If you find this story meaningful and want to follow what happens next, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any episodes. And please leave a like to support me. It will be a great motivation for me to continue bringing you even better stories. Thank you so much and see you in the next episode.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Mình vừa làm xong một video về câu chuyện của Tiểu San và tieu nha mọi người. Bây giờ thì mình sẽ đi nghỉ và sáng mai mình sẽ làm tiếp. Cảm ơn mọi người rất nhiều. Hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong những video tiếp theo. Hy vọng rằng mình sẽ được tiếp tục gặp lại mọi người và mọi người sẽ ủng hộ và theo dõi cho kênh của mình nhiều hơn nhé. Tạm biệt mọi người. Hẹn gặp lại mọi người.